Welcome to Deal Nation. Today on the show, we've got Femi Ajose from Landverse. Femi, how you doing?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. You are, you're a really active affiliate for Launch Control. You've had what I think could really be described as kind of a meteoric rise in terms of building your land career and also the coaching work that you're doing. So, really excited to get your take on the land investing business, where it's at, where it's going, all of that. But we want to let the people know a little bit about who you are. So, you want to do a quick like hop, skip, and a jump. You know,
Yeah,
your background, your story.
absolutely. Yeah. Hi, guys. My name is Femi, and I started land investing in 2021. I got into real estate in 2020 with wholesaling real estate, so signing house contracts. I was originally a Division One athlete at Long Beach State. Um, my goal was to go to the Olympics, and then COVID happened, and I needed to make some money, and I just went headfirst into real estate, wholesaling, land, everything like that, and millions of dollars worth of deals later. Here I am. I'm teaching people how to do the same thing and still building my own business. So,
Cool. See, and you've been in California guy your whole life, right? Different
yeah,
parts of the state, but
some parts of the state, but yeah, I've always been a California guy. Yeah, absolutely.
cool. I was a California guy myself most of my life. I spent a little bit of time in Washington State, but went lived in the San Francisco Bay Area through high school. Went to school at UCLA, so it wasn't too far down the road from you at Long Beach. Well, probably about 15 years separated, but in terms of distance, not too far.
Mhm.
And any plans to flee the state like a lot of people, or are you sticking around?
You know what? My wife and I actually moved to Vegas a few months back, and it was just
Okay.
so dry. It was really, really dry. But I
Yeah.
met some really great people up there. I actually got to connect with one of my uh, illustrious mentors, Sumner. So that was really great. But it was just really dry. And I met a lot of great people up there, but I like to be by the water. So yeah,
Yeah. No, I would say as long as I can see it, it brings me a little sense of calm, So I like to be by the water too.
yeah.
Sumner Healy, I assume, right? So how did you link up with him initially?
Well, so actually, before I'd even found him, I found Land Academy. So Stephen Butella and Jill DeWitt. That's who I found first. Like when it came to land, just them on YouTube, and I was just binging all of their YouTube videos like day in day out, binging it. They used to go on Clubhouse, which I think is not an app anymore, but they would go on Clubhouse, and I would just go on there and just listen to whatever they were doing, and then I'd just take action, send out the mail, talk to people. Like that's all I would do, and I got a few deals done, and then I kind of realized that the way that like this is not working the way that I want it to where it's like an actual business. And so I remember seeing a video from Sumner where he was talking about how he sets up the business, right? And so I ended up joining him in like the end of 2022, and then I just kept putting my head down and aiming for larger deals, getting my systems in place, and formulating, over time, just formulating my own strategies on how to do it and how to make a lot of money with it, and my own KPIs and all these things like that. So yeah,
What were
that's
some of the early gaps that you noticed? Because I mean, I know that there's the kind of the foundational level playbook of what you do for outbound, what your options are for marketing there, which we can get into that a little bit more later.
mhm.
Um, you know, the amount of time that it typically, what you're going to say on a call to convert the call, what you need to put into the dispo side if you are yourself going to be selling those deals. There's that pretty standard issue playbook. So from that standard issue playbook, what did you see initially and go, I could do better?
Yeah, so I think one thing that um, a lot of people that create content around land don't emphasize on enough is how difficult it can be to get these deals under contract, and the amount of time and attention allocation that you have to put into, one seller just to get one thing done. And I think there's a lot of marketing that will suggest that all you have to do is make a few phone calls and then you're going to get a deal. When that may happen, but the reality is if you don't have a full framed acquisitions process, even from the point of like a seller receives your text or your mailer, and then from that point that they open your text or your mailer, there's framing happening, right? So you're building trust, you're building rapport through however you sent your text, or if they go to your website and there's a call to action to call you, or what your mailer actually looks like. who you're talking to in your mailer. Like all these things are things that people don't talk about, and it's mostly just send out the mail, talk to people, and then you'll get deals. So that's just on the front end, and on the back end, you have the actual acquisitions process of, okay, I called this person, he said that he didn't want to sell, so I guess he doesn't want to sell. As opposed to, okay, what does the actual follow up process look like with this person? Like, how do you actually follow up so that you can get a person from $600,000 to $350,000, which I've done that before. So
Hmm.
you know, I feel like when people get into this and they're watching the content, they think that it's a lot easier than it actually is. It's very simple, but it's just not easy. And you got to be willing to do the work if you want to get to those results.
Yeah, I like that. It's simple, but it's not. It's simple, but it's not easy. That's a good way of phrasing it. It's um, you know this from our previous conversations, but one of the things that we really try to get across to our subscribers at Launch Control is that Launch Control at its core is a piece of software. It
Hmm.
takes phone numbers and it sends out messages, and you get inbound responses. So when you get those inbound responses and you filter through, the metric that we're really aiming for is not how many messages you sent or what your response rate was. Our metric that we really care about is how many discovery calls did you get? Because if
Yeah.
you get onto a call with a homeowner, it is no longer about marketing. It's now sales processes. And if you
Yep.
don't have a process, if you don't have a system of touch points in mind, if you don't have a framework for negotiation in mind, it's you might be able to buy some you know sub $3,000 lots just on charm alone on a phone call. But if you want to start getting into the bigger ticket deals, like you talked about, going like, taking someone from 600,000 to 350, like that, that's not happening on. There's nobody in the world charming enough to do that on a single phone call,
No.
or professional enough to do that on a single phone call. You need a process in place, and that's we see the same thing through the subscriber base where there's understandably there's excitement to get rolling, and there's excitement to get to that place of having those calls, because those calls have the clear perception of money attached to the other side, right? You get
Absolutely.
that deal, you get money coming in, it's proof of concept, gives you that deep breath to move forward. But this is going to be a business.
Yeah.
You're going to need to have like structure in place to be able to close these out on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And if you don't have that structure, then it'll be, a deal here, a deal there. And that's what I think a lot of people might get caught into that. I'm like, oh, this is
Mhm.
all it can be, but you just don't have any system. You don't have any infrastructure. And that's one thing that I've been able to specialize in is the infrastructure and showing people how to go from like, okay, maybe I did 7 deals to okay, now I'm consistently doing multiple deals per month because I've put all these things on a conveyor belt. And once you get to that
Yeah.
point, you really get to the point where you can, enjoy your time, have freedom, do the things that you want to do without worrying about, where's my next deal going to come from.
Yeah, and that's tough. Like I've even like in the past, even just doing like freelance work, right?
Mm,
It is not as relaxing as it sounds on the surface, right? Like if you're a freelancer, you're working for as a copywriter or whatever, the concept is that you'll have your time and you work
right.
in these bursts and you make some money. But what you don't realize going in is that you're spending a ton of time trying to hustle up the next job, and you're not getting paid for that.
Yeah.
And in that process of like trying to hustle things up, you always have that or at least certain personality types, you get that sense of anxiety of like, is this going to work?
Hmm.
Is that you're in that constant sense of needing to like reaffirm that this is going to work, right? So
Yeah.
with deal flow, it can be similar, and that if you've got those sporadic deals, it's always the question of like, can I truly commit to this,
Yeah.
right?
Did I get?
Whereas,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, absolutely. And I think again, people that this can be really hard, and you can burn yourself out if you don't have any systems or have any infrastructure. Right. That's the biggest thing that I have seen personally of people that like get out of the game because they're like, I don't, this is not working as well as I thought. And I think
yeah,
a constant, look at your systems and changing the systems and okay, what's working here, what's not working here. And I think so. I'll give you an example, right? Let's say your mailers haven't been working for a certain amount of time, or you're not seeing response rates like you used to see. So first of all, people don't even know that they're not seeing response rates that they used to see because they're not tracking them, right? People don't know that, okay, if I was sending 15,000 mailers, I was having this amount of conversations, I was making this many offers, which was leading me to closing this many deals. So if they see a dip, they don't actually know where the dip came from because they're not tracking those metrics. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes, well, oh, well, mail's just not working. And oh, there's a lot of people getting into land. And so it's just not working for me, right? As opposed to, well, wait, I was sending 15,000 mailers. Now my conversations have dipped. So is it in the mailer? Let me look at the mailer. Maybe I need to curate my mailer a little bit more to talk to a specific kind of person, as opposed to maybe generalizing it. Maybe I need to go for a specific kind of deal and figure out what profile of person that is for this deal and talk to that person. Um, and let me split test it. Maybe I need to split test my mailers a little bit and see what the response rate is and what the difference is. Like there's a lot of people that don't do that, and I feel like that these are small things I'm talking about, right? But that makes all the difference in you getting that extra 7 to 10 deals in a year. Is just being able to split test and being able to iterate and being able to see like what what you're doing in your business so that if it's not going as well, you can change it. So
Yeah. Yeah, and using marketing as a full set of tools, right? So if you have in your business what you're looking to achieve is, for instance, you're looking to have 60% of your business is in flips,
correct.
uh, 30% of your business is in seller financing. So
Yeah.
you've got like monthly consistent income coming in, and then 10% you're focused on finding those big like subdivide lots that you can work on putting a little bit of money into and then selling them off in pieces and making the money that way. And if you've got that, and then you're looking at your available marketing tools and you're going, well, for the 60% where I'm looking for just available deals in the market, and it doesn't have to be hyper specific to what my buyers want, or what as long as it's in the county and it meets certain price qualifications, then
Right.
maybe you're using text or even having someone do some cold calling and trying to get people on the phone that way. And then for those more targeted strategic plays where you're specifically looking for something that your buyers want, whatever that may be, right?
Mhm.
Or the subdivide thing that you're
Right.
looking for, then you're not only split testing, but you're dividing your channels into where they're most likely to have the highest impact.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And I think, you know, a little bit of a divvy off. One thing that I was going to say is as far as text too.
Hmm.
I think the power in text is like you can reach a seller for a multi-million dollar asset within a day. And I think that that's very powerful as opposed to you sending a letter or a package of marketing or a mailer. Like I can reach that person in a day. And I think also the thing with that though is a lot of people don't realize how much work it might take with that text, right? But if I get a response and I can just work from there and I can talk to this person from there, like I'll give you an example. Like literally before we got on this meeting, I was talking to a seller. He has 89 lots in Illinois.
Oh.
His wife passed away. His father-in-law passed away. His father-in-law actually subdivided the lots off and then passed away, like literally, like right after it was done. They sold
Hmm.
one lot. I think they sold that lot for $75,000. All the lots have electricity, have water, have they all have sewer system. They all have all of that, right? All the utilities are there. And he was just like, "Look, I just you know, I just want to sell this. I want to get rid of this." And he said, I sold one of the lots for 75 grand, but I will like I'm ready to get rid of this. Like I don't and so I just said, okay, well, would you take 500,000 for all the lots? And he said yes. And I'll be able to probably sell that for anywhere from 750 to $800,000 in the market fairly quickly. And
Yeah.
so that was from a text, right? And so I think there's a notion that, oh, well, really big deals and things like that don't come from text. But if you can just get on the phone and have a conversation and really build rapport, then you're going to get deals. And I think you have to, the biggest skill, the biggest lever you can always pull with land and with deal making in general is to be really good at talking to people, really good on the phone, really good at mirroring and matching. every time I talk to someone on the phone, it's rare nowadays, but when I do, people are always like, "Man, like you, like I want to work with you because I like you." And so you got to be able to make that's there's such a negative notion about just real estate and investors and sales, and a lot of people have given it a bad rep because there's all these like predatory tactics as opposed to just making friends and building rapport, which is the
Yeah.
approach that I like to take.
Yeah, and it comes down to that happens a lot with scripting. And people who go in a little nervous, they don't come from a sales background. And and it kind of goes back to what you said, right? Like it's what was it? It's simple, but it's not easy,
Exactly.
you know? And that's the same is true for a sales call. Like you don't have to overthink it. Because if you go into a call and you go, okay, Femi, so what I'm hearing is blah, 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 blah. And what I can offer you is, and they're like, all right, well, you're in sales mode, right? Like you read Dale Carnegie. I get it. Like yeah, I hear a salesperson as
Yeah.
opposed to hearing someone who just has a legitimate interest in the land that they own. You want to find out kind of what their motivation is without saying, so what's your motivation?
Right.
Like you're just being yourself and taking those tenets that they teach in a sales call, personalizing them and making them friendly and making it sound human. And the same is true for a text. If you just send off text messages that sound very salesy or marketing heavy, that they're going to be read as such, right? So you want to be able to personalize them. I want to get into, you said, I believe you said it was mirroring and matching. And
Mhm.
I do want to talk about that, but I'm just going to kind of drop a pin in it for a second. I want to go back a little bit to your your process of kind of coming up to where you are now. How
Sure.
long did it take you to go from watching videos and just consuming all the content that you could
Mhm.
to having an actual seven-figure business?
Um, well, so it didn't take me very long to get my first deal. That's one thing I would say. It didn't take me very long to make money and see that it worked. And I think
Mhm.
that when it can take someone a long time, say it takes them 9, 10, 12 months, then it's hard to see the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But it didn't take me that long. It took me a few months to get my first deal. Now to actually build to the level I am now, I would say towards the end of mm, towards the middle of 2023, that's when I really started to like ascend for sure. That's
Yeah.
what I remember, like yeah, deal after deal was closing. I was able to like invest a large amount of money into things that I always wanted to invest in, and it started to just really take off and really do well. Um, so well that my wife and I went and traveled for 3 months straight. So and my business was still
Amazing.
making.
Where'd you
So
go?
uh, we went to Dubai, Turkey, Italy, Spain, and London.
Cool.
We were gone for 3 months, and that entire time, my business was making a lot of money. And yeah, that was a feeling like no other. And I think it was just me putting my head down and focusing on doing deals, closing deals, building the systems, training the team, tracking the KPIs, sending the mail at the time, just being consistent with that. And yeah,
Do you have a big team to run that, or are you still kind of wearing most of the hats?
no, yeah, no, I have 3 people on my team currently: acquisitions manager, transaction coordinator, and disposition manager. And that's pretty much it. I think you can run a really lean team and still do, 7 figures a year
Okay.
flipping land.
So here's a question that I always have when the prominent coaches like yourself get up to that space is you've got this business, it's firing. You're off traveling with your wife, you're in Spain eating tapas, you're still making boatloads of money.
Mhm.
When did you get the coaching bug and kind of why?
So when at that time I started posting on TikTok, and so I was just talking about my experience and what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about being a coach or a consultant or doing anything like that. I was fine just continuing to do deals, but I started having a lot of people asking me like, "What are you doing? How are you doing it? What are you doing? How are you doing it?" And I was like, "Okay, well, this is a completely different business opportunity for me. If I can help, say, 200 people make $250,000, that's a very fulfilling thing because I know that I was able to change someone's life. And many of my clients have been getting some great results and will literally say in their testimonials, like, you changed my life and this is the best decision I've ever made. And that's a, I mean, it's a crazy thing because yeah, I can continue to make money. I continue to make, you know, a lot of money per year, right? But showing someone else how to do that, there's a lot of power in that. There is, because there are many people that, ascend to certain levels and they don't pull anyone else up with them. They don't help anyone else. And I felt like that when I was coming up on my journey, that, there are very few people that were willing to actually, show me what to do and that actually cared too. Like there are many people that will coach and they don't really care. They care about your fee. And once you pay your fee, it's like,
Yeah.
you hopefully you learn it or you don't, whatever. But I really have put a
Get
lot of
a
time.
Google shared drive and off you go.
Right. And some of it will be from 5 years ago. It's not really applicable
Yeah.
information anymore. And so I I have put a spin on that, and I really, I pay very close attention to my clients and making sure that they're being accountable for their goals, and we hold accountability calls and things like that. So I would say the switch really came from me going on social media and realizing that there's a lot of power in people knowing who you are and people knowing what you can do to help them. I actually had deleted my social media in 2019 and I didn't have anything like any social media at all. I was a ghost on social media until
Hmm.
2023. And I just kind of realized like you see all these guys just on social media, millions of followers, all these things. And I don't want to be a guy like that, but I do think it is important to have, a name and have people know you for what you do and how you can help.
Are you seeing a lot of community come out of Landverse? A lot of connections made between the
Uh,
students?
Absolutely. And even personally, I've done a lot of JV deals with the students in Lambert over the last year or so. I think we've been in business for coming up on a year now. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of the really overlooked elements of finding the right group to work
Hmm.
with, because you're not only getting the mentorship from the primary person in the community, in this case you, right?
Right.
And you're leaning on their mentorship and leaning on their experience to kind of help give you those playbooks you need and fill the gaps that you need to fill. But also, like you said, like within the community, there are JV opportunities amongst members. There are certain things that you've told me some of you know the background of people in Landverse who are coming from really great real estate backgrounds or really get great sales and marketing backgrounds where they
Right.
have unique skill sets that they could potentially offer at different parts of the pipeline. A
Hmm.
simple one, if you don't know you want to turn over a property on the dispo side and you have no clue how to write a really engaging post that's going to get you know people interested in coming back to you, and you've got a really strong sales and marketing person in the community that can kind of review and help and revise.
Yeah.
That's extremely powerful. So that networking that comes from the right community, it's not, you obviously don't want to find one of the Dropbox gurus. You want to find somebody that actively works with students. But
Right.
when you do that, access to the community, that can be a lifelong lifeline.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I've had a lot of career professionals come through the community. I mean, I have one guy in particular that just comes to the top of my mind. So I get on a call with him. It was like, I think it was a Saturday morning. We get on a call, and he tells me that the day before he had quit his job at Google because he saw me on a podcast, and he just decided to go all in. And he
Wow.
was making a lot of money at this job. Like people would be, clamoring for that job, but he quit because he wanted to go all in on land. And
Yeah.
our first deal together, he's made a multi six figure spread. And so,
Wow.
I mean, just the idea of just betting on yourself and coming from that, like the height of heights, like you're working at Google, you're at a executive level, and you decide to, I mean, just quit and flip land because you know that there's more here. And I think that that's it's a very powerful thing. And so,
Yeah. I Oh,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I remember you and I talking, and we did a YouTube live event probably like a couple months back, just for the first of the year.
Yeah.
And I think I said live on that, what's the average deal size for a land deal nationwide? Like, maybe a 10K assignment fee. And you looked at me like, sure, if you suck at your job, right? Like if you're just like that wasn't a kind of number that you really wanted to shoot for as an average in your business. And I know that that's not what you teach within
Yeah.
Landverse. So can we touch a little bit on your sort of bigger deal philosophy in terms of land investing?
Yeah. I mean, it's really a lot of just targeting, very specific targeting in markets that I see where properties are moving really quickly. So let's say like if I see a 250 acre, $250,000 parcel, right? Let's say it's 25 acres, for example. If I see that moving in 90 days, and then I also see that in the specific market, at least 50 to 100% more properties have sold in the last 6 months than are for sale, then I'm going to enter into that market. And not only that, I'm only going to make offers that are, geared towards that, okay, 250 exit. So if we're exiting at 250, I need to be probably offering anywhere from 100 to 125. Um, that's really my approach and how I do it. There are minimum offer price. I'd say we'll go around 50K, right? And then if we're at 50K, then we need to be offloading for at least either double or even triple. I've done triples like that before, and that's essentially it. And it's just the consistency, and then also it's knowing how to deal make with the seller, how to negotiate, how to get them to tell you their story and their pain and the pain points of the property and the pain points of why they're calling you in the first place. That's really what it's about. Like if you are in markets where you see properties moving quickly and I see an asset, okay, this thing sold for $600,000 and it moved fast, then I'm going to enter into that market. But it's more about the conversation that you have on the back end after you send the text or you send the mailer that's going to get you the deal. That's really what it's a lot more about. And then also when you're able to depict a story on the market when you go to actually sell it, like how what kind of story am I telling, like who is this for, who is this property actually for, and how do I tell the story to that person so that they see it a lot faster, right? So
Hmm.
my marketing and my photos, like how do I take my photos for a hunter versus a builder, how do I in the listing description, how do I talk about this property for a hunter versus a builder, what kind of verbiage should I use, right? And so these are a lot of things that I implement to make sure that I'm selling properties, as fast as possible on the market.
Yeah. So knowing your end buyer and knowing, how to package things up so
Mhm.
that it's going to garner interest from that end buyer makes
Correct.
perfect sense. We just did last week, we had Callan Faulkner on with Launch Control. It's on Launch Control's YouTube live station where she goes over how to leverage AI tools to put together those presentations. And it's super useful. Like you can really like put together some beautiful slide deck level kind of presentations for end buyers, and it's not going to take a ton of time. It doesn't require all of your marketing. So, good resource for sure if anybody's interested in that. But for the bigger deals, I think the first point of hesitation for people
Mhm.
would be risk reduction, right? They look at that big number and they go, "Wow, I don't have 150K of my own money to put into this."
Yeah.
And what if it doesn't sell in 70 days or less? Then what? So
Mhm.
so what for people that are a little gun shy about the bigger deals? What are some of the risk reduction things that you would normally advise?
Well, I mean, getting a JV partner is the first thing. You don't need to, and that was just how I thought from the beginning. I don't even think that I mean, I was 21 years old, so I wasn't really thinking about risk. I was like, well, if everything just goes awry, I'm still 21. So that was it's also just my youth.
Yeah,
It's also
yeah, yeah.
confidence in myself. But I mean, JV partners, having those and having really good JV partners that you can trust and you can depend on, that's something that is definitely important. But I also say this, like money will always find good deals. So if you can consistently find good deals, the money will always find it. That's the other thing. And I think you're going to end up scaling yourself a lot faster if you're doing deals that are making you 50K, 60K, 70K, 100K consistently, as opposed to a deal that's making you 5 or 10K. And I think that there's when people get into this, they think that there are levels to it, which there are because there's levels of sophistication, there's levels of experience and understanding. Like I'm going to be able to get a deal done a lot better and a lot smoother than the person that's just starting because I've had my 10,000 hours. But by the same token, if you're aiming for the deal that you're offering $100,000 on, many a times, if you just talk to the seller, what you'll find is that the deal that you're working, that's, you might be buying for $100,000, is actually a lot easier to work than the deal that you might be buying for $15,000. Because the person that you're buying from that has for $15,000, they have a lot of reserves. They might think you're scamming them. Like, there's a lot of conversation that you have to get over, as opposed to the person that you're buying something. It's $100,000 acquisition price. A lot of those reserves are just not there, and so it's a lot easier for you to build rapport. They're a lot more open. This is just what I found in talking to these two different types of profile, and it's not always the case, but most of the time, it's easier for you to talk to the person that you're buying $100,000 property from than it is the smaller, lower ticket property.
And most of the time, you're talking to individuals still, right? You're not getting into like dealing with investment groups or larger entities. You're still talking one on one with individuals.
So I've done a few deals where I've talked to larger entities and bought from large entities and larger investment groups and people that were looking to just offload their assets.
Hmm.
Maybe their their forefathers before them, they owned an asset and needed to offload it,
Yeah.
and they just didn't care about it because they weren't going to do anything with it anymore, or maybe for tax reasons, or they wanted to 1031. I work with a lot of 1031 clients as well that needed to sell this one and go buy something that was similar to it, just because they weren't going to
Can
use
you
it. Or
do a quick explanation on that for those who don't know?
yeah, so a 1031 exchange is when you are selling a property and you need to find a similar property within, let's say, I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it's like 6 months or something like that. Within a certain amount of time that you need to go buy another property. And what happens is so the proceeds that you get from the sale, you can transfer it into the acquisition of the next property without any tax penalty, essentially.
Yeah.
So if you were to sell a property, so if I was to sell my house for $1 million, right, I'm gonna have to pay capital gains taxes on that. But if I sell the house and then I go buy another house that's similar to it and I execute the 1031 exchange, then I don't have to pay the capital gains tax because I transfer the money from this one into the next one. So
Yeah, it's one of like the key tenets in Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? They talk about that a lot. Where, yeah. In terms of in terms of the bigger deals, like one of the things I you mentioned was, let's say you get like 50, 60K, right?
mhm.
I think another really great benefit of that is kind of anxiety reduction, right? Like if your baseline expenses for your life, to cover your mortgage, cover groceries, cover the car payment, have a bit of an emergency fund, or let's just, to make it easy math, let's just say that's 60 grand for the year, right? Maybe
Mm,
it's more, but let's just say 60 grand for the year. And
right.
you make that 60 grand and you have an owner payout of 50, 60 grand by the end of February. Everything after that is just win. It's just a win, right?
Yeah.
Like you've covered your baseline expenses. You literally can't lose at that point, right? Like you're just all in the space of gains. And so that if it does happen, where even with all of the best systems and structure in place, you have a really slow April, May, June before things pick up again in July, it's okay because you already covered your baseline expenses and you did that via a bigger deal. Whereas opposed to doing some of like the really really small deals where you're like, well, I need an average of 2.5 of these every month consistently
Right.
in order to make my baseline plus make some progress with my business. Then that slow April, May, June feels quite a bit different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's another thing. A lot of folks will talk about how many deals they've done. And I think that's a great thing. But also, like, if the size of your 7,000 deals was, 5 grand, or the average size of it, then like doesn't really matter. Like I'd rather do 100 deals and make 50K for all those deals than do 7, 8,000 deals for $1,000 or $2,000, or I'm seller financing them for $50 a month or whatever it is. That's just how my brain works. Like I'd rather just get cash in as quickly as possible and continue to turn over and continue to scale the business, because you're able to scale a lot faster too when you get in a $70,000 profit or an $80,000 profit or a $90,000 profit. You can scale so much faster. And for someone that's just starting out doing this, like you just said, having that 60K influx, the 70K influx, when they probably, honestly, probably haven't had that before, especially if they're coming from a job or something like that. You don't even know what to do with that. And
Yeah.
I have another client. She started out with very little money, and within a few months, a few flips, she's got almost $70,000 in cash, and she's
Wow.
20. And I was talking to her, and she's like, "I don't really know what to do with this. Like, I'm actually kind of freaking out because I don't know what to do with it." And she goes from
Yeah.
like having like maybe I don't know 10K in the bank to having 70K in the bank in like a matter of months just from doing these. And so I mean that you can't do that if you're doing $5,000 deals. It doesn't come. It doesn't happen like that. You got to be able to scale as fast as possible. That's what I'm a really big believer in.
Do you offer any kind of guidance or advice to people in that situation?
Mhm.
Because what certainly happens in real estate, maybe not often, but it happens. People get that $70,000 and they immediately reinvest all of it into real estate because they're in real estate.
Right.
Whereas, that sitting on that kind of money, there's different pipelines you can set up to keep yourself balanced. So do you give any kind of like financial guidance advice, or are just pointing people in the right direction?
I try my best. I try my best and try to help people from some mistakes that I have made. And yeah, I think reallocation towards your business is the biggest thing. But also, I mean, you need to be able to have funds to, I mean, one, just hold yourself for like the next 12 months, right? You should have that. So that way you're not stressing about this and you can really like hone in on your business, right? Like if I know all my bills 24 months, then I'm not going to really be as like I'm not going to be stressed out. All it is creation. All it is deal making. All it is building the system that's going to keep this train rolling. Um, when you say investing in real estate, you mean like going to buy like a duplex or something like that, or
Well, I mean, it depends. If you're pouring it straight back into
right?
the primary business, that's one
Mhm.
thing. If it's being used to build diversity, that's another. So that's kind of
Yeah.
what I mean in the sense of giving advice.
So for me too, like I waited. Well, I would invest like a small amount of money into say S&P 500 into
Hmm.
some other things which we don't have to talk about here. But it
Yeah.
would be like maybe 15% of what I'm making, right? I'd
Right.
invest that, and I'd also just pour a lot back into the business because I knew that if I made $200,000 on this deal, right? Well, how many more deals can I get just like this? So let me reallocate towards that. And how do I build this system more so
Yeah.
that way consistently I'm getting deals like that? It's not just like a once in a blue moon kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I did very early on. And now, I'm able to invest quite a lot of money into other things that I've always wanted to invest in. So
You're able to
that's
bankroll yourself and not have to go through funders and
right. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. The other thing too, and there's I've talked to a lot of people who say that they like fall into cycles of you know using the money for the wrong things, like going
Mhm.
on just doing silly stuff that you shouldn't be doing when you haven't built up until the point where you can actually do that, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
if you make $50,000 and you decide to go spend 30 on nonsense, well then you're gonna continuously find yourself in this trap of I can't scale my business because you're not reinvesting into the business.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. I tell people to just keep the discipline. Whatever got you to this point, do that and more now, right? Continue to build
Yeah.
that.
And
And
have a have a strategy in place. So you don't take, you got an influx of $20,000 and you're like, well, I'm going to spend $20,000 on direct mail, all of it.
yeah, which is
Don't
silly.
don't don't do that.
Yeah,
Like to spend a portion of it, sure. Like to spend a targeted amount of that onto a targeted list to try to acquire a certain kind of deal, absolutely. But don't get too excited about that quick win where you want to invest in your business, not dump money into your
right.
business.
And then I'd also, for me, I'm always trying to learn from as many people as I possibly can. And so, especially early on, I was like, okay, who else can I learn from? Who else can I meet with? Who else can I connect with? If I have to invest money to do that, I'll do it. I'll do that as well. And I still do that. I'll still pay for masterminds. I'll still pay someone to talk to them on the phone, or whatever it is. Like anyone that I feel like, if I see a guy doing 10 mil a year, or I see a guy doing 5 million, whatever it is, I want to talk to them. I'm gonna figure out like what they're doing to get to where they are so that I can go and get there. So
Yeah.
that's another
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
That's
I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that people often don't want to pay for right out of the gate, and I understand that. But the security that comes from having the right mentorship and the right community is invaluable. So
all right.
if you take like, option A, I'm part of your community. I'm part of Landverse. I find a deal. I need a JV partner on it because of the cost structure. I find someone else in the community that wants to partner with me on this deal, and we collectively say, "Well, let's ping Femi. Let's talk to him about it. See what he thinks." We ping you, and you're like, "Yeah, guys, looks like a great deal." The amount of confidence achieved just from that having multiple checkpoints for a deal and the option to have JV partners within a community makes your likelihood of success extremely high with that deal. Now, if you option B, you go onto a Facebook community and you say, "Hey, I'm looking to do deals in East Texas. Anybody want a JV on a deal?" And you're just finding some rando on a Facebook group and trusting in the process, your risk profile goes up significantly. So if there's a pay structure to get into that community, but the ROI on that community and the risk reduction on that community is sky high, it pays for itself 1,000 times over.
Right. No, you're 100% right. And I think continuously finding yourself in situations like that so you can really shorten your learning curve. That's what this is all about. You want to be able to shorten your learning curve and get there as quickly as possible, because there's no reason to spend time turning over this stone, turning over that stone, and hoping that there's gold under the stone. I'll just tell you, the stone's right here. Here you go. Right.
Right, that's right. The stone's right
That's
here. Yeah.
verse, right? And so
That's
just
going to
turn
be
over.
the title of this episode. The stone's right here.
Yeah. So that's what we've gotten really good at. And just because, again, I've spent thousands of hours doing this, so I know what works, I know what doesn't work, I know what you need to do, I know what you shouldn't do. And so,
Right.
yeah, the power in that, when people get in there and start applying, is second to none.
No, it's amazing. All right, so there's a few more things that I want to get to. One question that I have coming out of working with Landverse, working with yourself, working with the community is, you've been a great proponent of launch control. I know you use it in your business, and you and I have talked about kind of the necessity on some level of outbound marketing. Like, it's pretty hard to scale without some level of active marketing in your business in Land. But that said, what do you see when you really have not necessarily somebody who's at your level, but let's say somebody who's worked within the Landverse community, they've got that community connection, they've got their business up to 250K per year or higher on average. What percentage of their time, effort, deals come from outbound versus those that come from just networking and knowing their market and sort of creating opportunity within more limited space?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, pretty much when you're at that level, pretty much 99% of it is outbound marketing, and
Okay.
talking to people, making the connections. I think you got to get to a point where you've done a certain amount of deals in a specific market to where then you can get to inbound, and people need to know you, know your name, know how many deals you've done. Maybe it's a broker or a title company, but you have to lay down some roots before you start getting deals done like that, um, where they're referencing you to people, right? So yeah, I would say about 99% of it is outbound marketing. And it's better that way though, because then you can control your business, right? Then you can say, well, I know that if I send out 10,000 mailers, I know really what's going to come back if I aim at these kinds of markets. And then it comes back and your results and your income is very predictable. I think you want to get to the point where you're creating the most amount of predictable income possible in your business. You don't want sporadic income. You don't want, well, maybe this will happen, maybe it won't happen. I don't want that. I want to create predictable income. I want to know that if I send out this amount of mail, this amount of text, that I'm going to make $75,000 in the next 45 days. That's what I want to know, right? And the only way to know that is by tracking those things and making sure that you're
Mhm.
consistently setting out the marketing.
Yeah, trackable and I think teachable is important too, right? I think you said you have a team of three,
Yeah,
but in order for you and your wife to step away for 3 months and
mhm,
money to be coming in all of that time, obviously you were, taking calls, you were closing deals,
right,
but in order for that system to work without you being there, you can't be the linchpin for every decision, right? So like you have to have the systems in place that others can do the things that are not that don't require your time. Your time should have super high value, right? Like if
right,
you're on a phone call, let's say you have 8 phone conversations with someone to get them from 600,000 to 350,000, but then you
right.
sell it for 550. Like your time over those 8 phone calls was worth like $80,000 per phone call, right?
Exactly.
And your time, it should be that valuable. And so having the systems in place to have somebody else tee up a batch and launch control and send it, because that doesn't actually require your time. It's
Right.
just the conversations that are generated from that do.
Exactly. I think that's why processes are so important and being intentional about creating good processes in your business. And I mean, these are things that I've built out very extensively, but I think everyone works very differently. So I actually encourage all of my clients to go through our SOPs and all of our processes and our templates, but then I encourage them to take that and see like apply it to their business and then how do I work and how does this work for me? And then as you're doing that, as you're formulating that, you create the process around how you want your business to run. Because the same
Yeah,
way my business runs, there's another guy out there that I mean probably does 7 figures by themselves, right? It doesn't have any team and makes and their profit margins are probably extremely high. And I think everyone just works really differently. And I think when you can create processes around how you best work and how and what you can do, then I mean sky's the limit for you. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about because I don't think that it's a one size fits all kind of business model. It's not. I think you can create processes around how you want to work and the life that you want to live, which is why like a lot of the time what I'll say is like this is your life by your design, right? If you can
yeah,
make if you can make $500,000 a year or more net, like take home, you're really able to do whatever you want to do. Like it's like at that level, at this level, it's like you can do whatever you want to do. There's not like a you're not beholden to anyone's time. There's none of that. And so I think for me, um, yeah, getting there was just all about like, okay, how do I want to live my life? What do I want to spend my time doing? How do I want to build? How do I want to invest? And what does that look like for me? Do I want to be on 5 meetings a week? No, I don't. So it's like, how do I want to design it? And that's what this is essentially about.
yeah. No, I love that. Like just designing your own life, reverse engineering things. Because you're right. Like you have that much money, and the only limitations that you have are energy and imagination. You have
Correct.
both of those things. You can do whatever you want. Really, money
Yeah.
isn't a concern. So imagination. Imagination's imagination. You're either going to think of fun, interesting things to do, or you're not. But energy that's very controllable based on how much you have to expend on your business and how much you don't, and figuring
Absolutely.
out ways to limit that energy um, uh, outlet so that you can really focus on, again, like we said, the high profit producing activities, all the better. So let's go through the sort of main building blocks of a business and
Mhm.
get some quick, like, do this, don't do that feedback from you. We'll do it as kind of like a rapid fire session.
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. So do, don't do. Setting up your corporate structure for your business.
Well, if you're going to be texting, I would do that right away. Um, so there's a few things. There's a few ways to do it. I would pay the least amount possible to set up your entity, your LLC, like the least amount you possibly can. If you try to go through a legal Zoom or something like that, they try to give you all these things that you don't need. You just literally need the LLC. You can also just file your LLC directly with the state and just give them everything, all your information needed to file directly with whatever state that you're in. And I would also get a registered agent on like all of your entities. I wouldn't have my name on any entity because the seller can get upset, come back and say, hey, this guy from this area, I'll give you an example. My company, one of my land flipping companies was on the news,
Hmm.
the Iowa State News, and they mentioned the company name, but they mentioned an alias that I used. They didn't mention my name, and so it kept me out of some hot water because they didn't want me to send mail there or whatever. But I
Yeah.
would just always use a registered agent and try to, you know, protect yourself from sellers and any nonsense that could come your way.
Yeah. So the only, yeah, in line with that, I would just say, you can do a lot of this yourself, but I do personally, I think it's worth doing a consult with someone that understands the legal framework of
Yep,
LLCs, so you know how to ultimately, like, protect yourself to the highest degree, right?
exactly. Yeah. So that's yeah. When I started, I actually just used LegalZoom, and I have I'm friends with a lot of good attorneys, and actually have family that are attorneys. So I have a little bit of a different experience. So I'm able to just
Yeah.
call, but I always get the help from a professional as well.
Absolutely. All right. So, I mean, you are an educator yourself. We'll have the links to Landverse and everything below in the episode description, of course. But do's and don'ts for kind of education and just processing whether this is a good business for you or not.
Well, if you're trying to decide who to go with, then if you're trying to decide like who to learn from, don't go with anyone that doesn't show any HUDs. Well, that's like one of the first things. Like
Yeah.
don't go with the guru that doesn't show any HUDs or anything like that, and is driving the yellow Lamborghini or whatever it might be. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Just do's and don'ts in terms of getting educated and maybe even betting whether land is for you or not for you.
Yeah. Okay. So vetting if land is for you or not for you. Are you going to be a person that's going to be on the phone consistently? Are you going to be a person that's going to be willing to take the punches to get to where you want to go? I think that's the biggest thing because you're going to take some hits. When I started doing this, I saw a lot of content about just how easy it was going to be and how you could just do this and that you're just going to make so much money and all this, right? But you get into this and you realize that you're just being sold a dream and you're the only one that can make that dream come true. It's not
Yeah.
anyone
I
else.
love that.
If you learn what you need to learn, if you learn from the right people and you do the work and you go through it, then your dream can come true. But if not, you're just buying a dream. And that's all that it will ever be because you're not putting in the work.
It's simple, but it's not easy, like you said.
Exactly.
You got to put that work in. Okay, market analysis, do's and don'ts.
Don't ever go into a market where more properties are for sale than have sold. And don't go into markets where the utility for a property is very low. Try to think about who buys this, why do they buy it?
Okay.
And if there's demand for it, and if you can see that there's a proof of concept for someone actually buying this property on a consistent basis or this kind of property, then that's the kind of market that you need to be in.
Yeah, and when you're going back to education, there's tons of tools out there to help you evaluate markets and whether what the influx is. Even if you want to do it back of the napkin on Zillow and Redfin, you can do it to
Right.
figure out what the ratio is.
I would say too,
Um,
one more thing. When I actually started, there weren't, you have Land Insights now, which is, I mean, a powerhouse of a tool, right? Landverse is actually partners with them, and we use it in our business. Like it's a powerhouse of a tool. But one thing I would say is that didn't exist when I started doing this. So you couldn't like you just kind of had to parse things together and figure it out. And so as these tools are I mean, really in like the last year or so, I feel like a lot of new land tools have started to arise. And for anyone that's getting into this business at this time, if you're using tools like that, you're going to be able to, like on the market side, you're going to know exactly where to go. And all you have to do is work the phone on the other end. And if you know how to do that, then you're going to make a ridiculous amount of money compared to even people that started doing this years ago because these things didn't exist.
yeah, or people that are just going into their own backyard because it's familiar, right? Like,
Right.
but finding the actual high value markets for sure. Okay, two more systems in general, like do's and don'ts from marketing through dispo.
Yeah, you don't want to be using things like Excel sheets in your business. You want to have a very smooth process from the time that a seller opens your mailer to the time that they call or the time that they see your text and the time that they're pushed to your CRM. You want to have a very smooth touch point process. And depending on what your time like looks like, I'm always trying to book appointments with sellers. Like you want to be able to book an appointment and have your business presented as a service-based business. And so if you have a lead, you want to take care of that lead as if you spent $1 million on that lead. And so with all of that, framing is important. The kind of content that they see about your company is important. Booking an appointment is important. Making sure that you're on time for that appointment is important. All these things are important in framing a seller and trusting you to perform come closing day.
Amazing. And then last one, we touched on this a little bit, but insights on for those that don't have, that business nest egg and the multiple 6 figures or 7 figures, funding, do's and don'ts for deal funding.
Deal funding or just funding your business in general?
Deal funding specifically.
I mean, just find partners that you can work with and find partners that are proven and have a track record of funding people's deals. Don't go with anyone that just claims they're a deal funder and they can't show you anything that they've done. I wouldn't go with anyone like that. I've heard some horror stories about people not getting paid for their deals, and I can't imagine. So just make sure you know who you're working with. Make sure they have a track record. Make sure they're proven, and that's the only thing I would say when it comes to deal funding. And also, like with that too, just make sure whoever you're going with, just like be sure that this is kind of goes along the same lines of the track record. If they have a track record, you know that on closing day they're going to be able to pay for it. But I've also had times with deal funders that I thought like, okay, we're going to be able to fund this deal because we worked with them before, and then they don't have the money. And so, also just always have a backup plan.
Yeah,
just have a backup plan all the time.
Yeah, and that I think kind of probably applies to a lot of what we talked about, right? Backup plan for a few different things.
For sure.
All right, perfect. Well, I really appreciate the time, man. It's invaluable advice as always. Anything else that you want to let the audience know about, we'll put any links below in the episode description so people can get in contact with you. So yeah, let the people know.
Absolutely. If you're interested in joining Lamverse, you can certainly book a call directly with me. I'd be happy to walk through your business with you and see how I can help and see how I can help you grow and scale your business. My YouTube is just my name's Femi Ajose, so you can watch all my content there. And then my Instagram is the Olufemi B on Instagram. So.
Okay, cool. And yeah, like I said, we'll put links to all of those in the episode description. Okay, well, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Very much looking forward to continuing to work with you on some educational opportunities for the land investors out there for the launch control community. It's going to be a good 2025 for us, for sure.
I agree. Likewise, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Bye.